Wales is aiming to become the UK's top destination for clean energy and green industries. But are slow planning, skill shortages, and government red tape holding it back? Could it be risking the momentum that it needs for a green industrial future? In this episode, you're going to learn how Wales can break through those barriers and how it can lead the UK's green industrial transition. Today's guest is Stuart McMillan of Net Zero Industry Wales. By the end of this episode, you will know how Wales can position itself as a global leader in clean energy. You'll also know what's really slowing down progress and how to accelerate it, and if the skills gap in Wales is really a crisis if we want to reach net zero. And just as an added bonus, you'll also get Stuart's one piece of advice that he'd give a younger version of himself if he wanted to go into net zero industry. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, Stuart McMillan. Stuart, good morning. The Net Zero Industry Wales website suggests that your vision is to make Wales the country of choice for producing sustainable goods and services. Could you talk a little bit about this ambition, please? And how do you actually see this happening?
Hi, Ben. Thanks for having me. Yeah, absolutely. So we think that Wales has got everything it needs to be a clean energy hub and a cornerstone of the UK's industrial base. And obviously, there's two parts there. Um, and what it really amounts to is decarbonisation without deindustrialisation. And Wales's history, its industrial history, it was sort of booming with coal, and then you had the 1980s, but there's still an awful lot of industry here, and a lot of innovative industry that does want to decarbonize. And then you've also got sort of the kind of the clean energy innovators and revolution in terms of things like Flow and Celtic Sea. um, Net Zero Industry Wales grew out of the South Wales Industrial Cluster. So that was the original sort of consortium of industry that set up, and it's one of 7 clusters across the UK to look at this question of kind of decarbonising it and net zero while sort of retaining traditional industry and supporting innovation and obviously retaining jobs. And obviously you'll have seen in the news places like Tata, Port Talbot, and sort of Milford Haven as well. These businesses are very, very keen to do what they need to do to clean up their emissions, but they're absolutely committed to staying in Wales. And so for us as to make Wales this clean energy hub, and it's already well on the way. It's about sort of 3 things. It's about actually developing and deploying these clean energy projects, and there's a planning and consenting element around that, which we're working very closely on to try and expedite the planning and consenting, because it's historically been quite difficult to get these things done quickly. Um, there's a sort of a culture piece. There's trying to kind of help understanding of that this is about retaining good jobs. It's about supporting communities. It's about supporting local industry and business. Um, and we see ourselves as a sort of public-private sector bridge. We're core-funded by Welsh Government, and we're also funded by our members, and the occasional sort of grants for specific projects through people like Innovate UK. So the North East Wales Industrial Decarbonisation Cluster, which we sort of led on and established earlier this year. That was an Innovate UK funded project with the likes of Uniper, SP Energy, Net Zero Energy Systems, and Bangor University. So bringing together these groups of people, so that we can all work together, we can all be on the same kind of hymn sheet, and also develop this comprehensive plan. And the SWIC model originally had something called the 5 cogs, and that's effectively fuel switching, process efficiency, all of the kind of the different sort of slices of the pie. So we see it as a very kind of it's got to be holistic, otherwise it's not going to work. And so if we can do that holistic transformation around clean energy, we will sort of retain our position as an industrial base in the UK. we sort of see three main kind of vectors where this can happen. The one is floating offshore wind. Probably surprised nobody that's one of them. We've always been a leader in offshore, and there's massive capacity for more in the pipeline. Non-pipeline transport of CO2, so carbon capture, and the sort of the north-south interconnector, as it's called, basically grid enhancement, because I think one of the key things that a lot of people in the industry know, but maybe kind of members of the public might understandably not be aware of, is like, well, none of this stuff happens unless you've got exponentially more grid capacity. And again, there are plans for that,
Yeah.
but we're working, we're working very closely with National Grid and SP Energy Networks up in North Wales to sort of um, to support that development. So that's how we see how we see ourselves positioned to try and make that happen. But it's, I think everybody's, and this is quite good. Everyone's quite clear now. I think that it's got to be holistic, and everyone's got to be working together on it.
Bro. So, talking about everyone working together on the same thing, the UK government has recently released its own industrial strategy. So, kind of the new modern industrial strategy. I'd like you to speak a little bit about how this actually impacts Wales specifically, if that's okay. So, how does Welsh industry in particular, uh, how are they affected, and how does this affect NZRW's ambitions to make Wales that sustainable goods and services hub of the world, really?
Um, there was a lot of good stuff in the industrial strategy. I think one of the biggest takeaways was the effective uplift of the energy discount from 60 to 90% for energy intensive industry. We've got a lot of that in Wales. In some of the other clusters, a lot of them are small businesses or SMEs, um, and so their needs are slightly different. We've got a really thriving small business community in Wales, and I think actually the British Business Bank, working with Cardiff Capital Region to unlock funding, is really gonna hopefully do a lot for small business. But for big business, I think there was a commitment to driving down energy costs, and there was a commitment to sort of more general infrastructure support. I mean, particularly in North Wales, around high net and carbon capture, hydrogen, pardon me, and then carbon capture storage as well in other parts of Wales. Um, I think there's now a commitment to industrial hydrogen deployment, and there is a massive commitment to carbon capture as a solution. Um, and I think the IS8 sort of model, that 8 key sectors, was really good to see, because there is a sort of an interconnectivity, between, um, and I think one of them was defence, aerospace. There's Airbus in Broughton. Um, so it cuts across all of these vectors, basically. um, £4 billion for the advanced manufacturing sector. Um, so I think there was an awful lot there for Wales. I mean, I think we need to see how it plays out. Basically, it was quite a top level document. But I think one of the things that was really encouraging was the mention of industrial clusters, which obviously is the model that we've been
Yeah.
working on for many years, and this acknowledgement of more place based solutions, and for the sort of, for the policy wonks out there, the Treasury is reforming the Green Book at the moment, which is basically the document, that how they decide how the money's allocated, and they're looking at a much more place-based way of doing that, which we're hoping means that, if there's a worthy project in sort of, that's going to have massive impact for the local community, and by local community, I mean South Wales or North Wales or West Wales, or then there may be more appetite from government to fund that. So I think it was things like that which probably at the moment sound a bit sort of nebulous, but that kind of stuff, if it actually comes off, I think is gonna be a real game changer.
Okay, bro. So, like you just said, then it's about how it's implemented now. We've kind of got the hymn sheet, as you said, where we all just need to implement it in the best way that we can. So going off the back of that, really, a common thing that you hear in industry perhaps is that slow planning processes are often seen as one of the reasons why things never get done, or not as fast as they should do, let's say. Um, so how can Net Zero Industry Wales and UK government help that issue? How can they speed up the planning and development in Wales specifically so that we can really start to see these projects come through at speed?
Well, I think again, there's some promising signs from government, particularly around the kind of the bigger projects, and a commitment to from the Secretary of State, effectively to to sort of expedite those um, as they kind of reach his desk. Um, but as far as Net Zero Industry Wales is concerned, we're working very closely on basically what we call it a target operating model, and effectively it's a framework to try and work contractually with the developer and the relevant public authority, to speed up the consenting process. And we're actually sort of working on this in the background quite a lot. Um, with the relevant local authorities and developers. And our belief is basically that, um, as with the clusters, if everybody is kind of around the same table, then it's going to get done quicker. And because we are, um, because we are that public private sector bridge, as I said, um, we can talk to sort of both sides, alongside, for example, people like NRW. On you're trying to get something built, but then there's probably an environmental permit that you need, um, and we can unlock slash break down some of the doors depending on your perspective, to get that done quicker. And this is um, as I say, this is a kind of a contractual sort of full service thing that we're offering, and effectively the developer would pay us for the service, but they wouldn't sort of double pay. So it's basically what they normally pay to get it done anyway. They would pay us, and we would support them in basically getting it done quicker because of our MOU with Natural Resources Wales, and because of our relationship um, with the public authority. So that's what we see as the big sort of log jam, if you like, and we're quite confident that we've got some good ideas to hopefully unblock that. Um, and there are plenty of examples of where the planning and consenting process has worked, and these projects are sort of they're on roller skates now. They're getting it done, but it's also just the sheer volume of projects, and so we hope that we were set up to support decarbonisation en masse. So we think that that's absolutely part of our role, where we're going to try and we're going to try and make it quicker and easier.
Brill. So we've kind of got, if we're going through what we've discussed, we've kind of got the roadmap. We're kind of speeding up how we do that, and now we're going into who's doing that. There's talk of a job and a skills gap developing in Wales, where to achieve this huge net zero ambition and to make Wales that sustainable hub of goods and services, um, what's the scale of this gap in
Mm.
reality? How big is this gap for the jobs that we need to fill and the people that we need to upskill to get there? Where do you see the biggest issues here?
Well, first of all, it's not just Wales; it's England as well. I think the ECITB's recent census demonstrated that it's an issue across the country. I think there are certain things that may be more acute in Wales, but
Okay.
yeah, we've not got enough people coming through. We've got an aging workforce in engineering, construction, and industry in general. Um, I think the average age is something like 55. Maybe just slightly younger than that. Um, that's not to say we've not got a lot of good people coming through. I meet them all the time. So I'm not. I think sometimes people talk about this stuff as a kind of existential crisis. I'm not sure we're quite there. But I think it is really important that we treat this as sort of the need that that it is. I mean, I think degree apprenticeships um, have been a success so far, and I think there's quite a clear commitment to roll out more of them. But I think it's also things like it's upskilling's a buzzword, but at the end of the day, the people that are working on gas pipelines might be working on hydrogen pipelines you know in the near future. So that's fundamentally going to be the same skills on a different on a with basically an element that has different properties. Um, and I think in that respect, kind of adult education is one that we often don't talk enough about, as in, people coming into the field as either career changers or they've been kind of working in something adjacent. So yeah, absolutely, the skills gap at the very beginning, where you need to be getting kids into sort of technical colleges and through apprenticeships and traditional degrees. By the way, I think it's important that we make that clear that that it's a broad church, really, that there's not one route. um, and then I think the other challenge is kind of identifying what we want, because I think a lot of people talk about this as sort of like, oh yeah, get loads of um, kids doing kind of engineering or construction or what have you. But you also need people that are able to be kind of project managers and site managers and plant managers, and I think for me this is where um, you almost need a bit of a kind of a strategic head, or even potentially a policy head. I'm not suggesting that these people need to be as sort of um, immersed in it as I am, because that's how I just like to spend my free time, sadly. But I think again, going back to that holistic point, I think the best people are very good at the sort of the high skill technical side of things, but they kind of get the concept as well. So I think we need to make sure that we don't miss that part of the conversation, basically.
Yeah, it's kind of you need a bit of everything, don't you? You need those technical colleges, you need the degree apprenticeships. And by the way, like if anyone's listening and you're not sure what to do, degree apprenticeships are excellent. Like I've got a lot of my closest friends doing them and couldn't recommend them enough. Absolutely brilliant.
Well, I think you
But
get
then you
and
also
sorry, go on.
no, so sorry, Stuart, you go for it.
I was just gonna no, I think you're right, and I think that it's that sense of kind of learning on the job, and I
Mm.
know a lot of employers will pay to put their people through degree apprenticeships, and having a conversation with some people who kind of actually getting people to sort of to be aware of that is not that they'll sort of go, well, people will, parents will come to me and go, what, you're going to pay for my kid to do this? And they
Mm.
go, yeah, well, yeah, of course, why wouldn't we? Because we want well skilled people on our site doing it. So I think there's, again, going back to the whole kind of understanding thing, it probably sounds a bit daft, but it's like I think a lot of people, and particularly from our generation, it was almost kind of, well, you go to university and you rack up the debt and then you sort of pay it off as a graduate. Whereas I think now it's really good in that you're returning to that option where it's like the employer will put you through it because it's really important, and that's kind of a demonstration of their commitment as well.
Yeah, and I mean, this is coming from a guy who spent, well, I'm coming up to 8 years in university now. I've spent far too long doing a PhD, and I mean, I see a lot of my friends who have done these degree apprenticeships, and they're absolutely flying now. So, and probably in a lot of ways, much better engineers as well because they've got those technical skills, like hands on the tools, much more
Yep.
experience, got their 10,000 hours there, So. Yeah, brilliant. So there's a lot to be optimistic about then. Like you said, there's opportunities coming through. It's not as existential as you perhaps might hear in the news or in on LinkedIn, let's say. Um, Brilliant. So let's imagine there's someone listening to this who's 16, 18, 20, or even a 20-year-old Stuart McMillan listening to this. Maybe not even from, the normal for net zero, the engineering background, let's say, someone who's Because am I right in saying you've got a English degree? I've got your
Yeah, I
LinkedIn
did
up
an
here.
English degree, and yeah, I'm sort of policy comms background. So yeah, I'm not from industry.
Okay, so let's imagine there's someone listening to this who doesn't have a industrial um, heritage or background, let's say, and they're coming in with an English degree and has some of those other skills that we just mentioned. What piece of advice would you give to them if they were thinking, oh, I really want to get involved in this net zero space. This looks really exciting to me. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I was always sort of, well, so I think first of all, it's kind of it's the sort of the policy social issue of our time, right? So I think everyone now has a general awareness of sort of that this thing called net zero is going on in the background. Um,
Mm,
and so I think in that, in that respect, I think a lot of people maybe do want to try and do their bit, but they don't quite know how. Um, for me, I think having though, we go back to the sort of the so-called soft skills. I think they're actually falling pretty badly out of fashion at the moment. But they I think it's really important that we're aware of how powerful they can be. Like in the sense that this is about telling a story. This is about telling the story of how Wales, if it builds all of this stuff, is gonna, it's and it's called comparative advantage, right? Like people kind of, so the detractors will go, well, we're only a small country, why should we even try, because China and India and the United States, and but it's like the point is that um there are certain things that we are as a country really much better at, or much better placed than others. Aerospace is one of them. As I said, advanced manufacturing. So I think in terms of people that want to get into it, I think just kind of keep your eyes and ears open, because you'll probably be hearing a lot of stuff that you don't immediately associate with it. But it is fundamental to it, because I think the net zero industry space is about jobs, it's about energy, it's about communities, it's about infrastructure, it's about planning, it's about law, it's about biodiversity. So I think that for me is the kind of, whether you're doing English or history or engineering or chemistry or sociology. And I think a lot of people now that are going into it, are from all of those backgrounds, because there is a social um, mobility element to it. There is um, as I say, a storytelling element to it. So I think that opening up of other disciplines is going to be healthy for it, because the last thing we need is a room full of brilliant technical people, um, that may not necessarily have other skills, and equally, the last thing we need is a bunch of you know um, humanities people that don't actually understand what happens to a thermocouple in a hydrogen furnace or what have you. So I think keep an open mind, and keep eyes and ears peeled, because and a lot of these people are recruiting quite aggressively now. As in, when I say aggressively, as in there are a lot of jobs coming about, because a lot of these organisations they need people like this to try and kind of push the strategy forward. Um,
mm,
but I think we recently, Techniquest became members of ours, and we're now working with them to sort of um, to try and engage young people a bit more. So I think the only other thing, which probably isn't helpful, but I think 20 years old is not too late, but I think I think there's an element of the earlier that you can kind of take a casual interest in it and start kind of talking to people, and sort of understanding how it's all working.
mm.
I think that's only going to be to your benefit. So.
Yeah, yeah. Talking to people and listening to podcasts as well. So
Well, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Listen to
yeah,
this
yeah,
podcast, ringing endorsement. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Great, yeah, love that. Just one follow up on that. You
Mm,
mentioned something really interesting there about leaning into those. What did you call them? Comparative advantages
mm,
or competitive advantages, let's say. Just as a close, then, where do you see the competitive advantages specifically that Wales has
Mm.
to, really propel itself to be a world leader in net zero?
Well, I think there are a few things. I mean, everyone goes, well, I know I'm not sure whether this is a trademarked kind of quote, but I've definitely heard people say, well, if there are 6 degrees of separation, normally in Wales there are two. And I think the fact that everyone knows everyone um, is
True.
is is a good thing, because it's all about relationships at the end of the day.
Mm.
I think the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, um, if properly applied, can definitely make us a world leader. Because I think what it really will do, hopefully, when it sort of comes of age, is it will add a kind of a rigor, like a regulatory rigor to things. The fact that you have to think about the long term, and I think one of the sort of the reasons the kind of the pundits have kind of given for maybe our sort of stop start on industry over the last 10-15 years is because it has been always short term, and it's basically been electoral cycles or even shorter. And I think the Wellbeing Future Generations Act encourages us to look further, and that can only be a
Yeah.
good thing. Um, and then I think, yeah, it's the sort of it's a sort of specific expertise. There's an awful lot of impressive stuff going on in Wales in energy and industry and advanced manufacturing, and to a certain extent there always has been. And I think there's a it's not just about scale, right? It's about having something exportable and investable. And I think that's the other thing. There's sort of as a sort of a smaller nation, but as a sort of developed nation, we should have a very favourable investment sort of landscape. And I think that is getting there. We've got the Development Bank for Wales now, for example, which I think is being really proactive, and coupled with the sort of the UK government's British Business Bank and National Wealth Fund and things like that. Um, I think that we've got everything we need, as I said at the beginning, to make it happen. I think it's about joining it all up and making sure that we're all working together to sort of to get it done.
Yeah. Bro, what a great place to end, I think. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Stuart. If people want to keep
Pleasure.
up to date with you and what you're doing, the great work that you're doing, where can they kind of keep up to date with everything?
Um, you can look at our website. That's nziw.wales. We're on LinkedIn, and I think if you're in the sector, you'll probably bump into us at some point. We're at all in all the
Yeah,
at all the usual places. But yeah, I mean, feel free to have a look at our LinkedIn. That's normally where most of it, where we normally talk about what we're doing.
bro. Thank you so much, Stuart, and all the best.
Thanks, Ben. Cheers.